Dr. Nardi here, back with another video. In our last video, we explored the biological and neurological roots of criminal behavior. But what if crime isn't something you're born with, but something you learn? Today, we're diving into chapter 4 of Bartol and Bartol's criminal behavior to explore the powerful role of learning and situational factors. We'll examine how our environment, experiences, and even the people around us can shape a path toward crime. A basic premise of this chapter is that criminal behavior is learned. But people aren't just passive sponges. We bring our own thoughts, memories, and strategies to every situation. We'll explore exactly how that learning process works. In psychology, we identify three main pathways for learning. The first is classical conditioning, often called Pavlovian conditioning. The second is instrumental learning, better known as operant conditioning, which focuses on consequences. And the third, which is the most comprehensive for our purposes, is social learning, where we learn by observing others. To understand these learning theories, we have to start with the school of thought known as behaviorism. It officially began in 1913 with John B. Watson, who argued that psychology should be the science of observable behavior. Early behaviorism was built on concepts like Pavlov's classical conditioning, focusing on how a stimulus in the environment gets a response. The most influential behaviorist, B.F. Skinner, refined this approach. He saw environmental stimuli as the independent variable that could be manipulated, and behavior as the dependent variable that could be measured. While he acknowledged that mental activity exists, he believed it was irrelevant for a scientific understanding of behavior. As a scientific method, behaviorism insists that behavior must be publicly observed and that data must be comparable. This leads to a powerful concept called situationism, the belief that our behavior is largely controlled by the immediate environment and situational cues rather than our internal personality. Skinner's most famous contribution is operant conditioning. This is the idea that we learn based on the consequences of our actions. The primary tools are reinforcement, which makes a behavior more likely to happen again, punishment, which makes it less likely, and extinction, where a behavior fades away when it's no longer reinforced. Let's quickly walk through this table. Positive reinforcement increases a behavior by adding a pleasant stimulus, like getting paid for doing a job. Negative reinforcement increases a behavior by removing an unpleasant stimulus, like fastening your seatbelt to stop the annoying chime. Punishment decreases a behavior by adding an unpleasant stimulus, like getting a ticket for speeding. Finally, extinction eliminates a behavior when there's no longer a consequence. If a slot machine never paid out, you'd eventually stop playing. Applying this to crime, the theory suggests that criminal behavior is learned and continues because it gets reinforced. The reinforcement might be money from a robbery, social status within a gang, or the psychological thrill of the act itself. The behavior persists because for the offender, it works. Now we move to social learning theory, which represents a more modern and comprehensive view. It argues that we don't just learn from direct rewards and punishments, we learn by observing others and by thinking about and interpreting our social experiences. It brings cognition, our thoughts, beliefs, and expectations, back into the equation. A great example is Julian Rotter's expectancy theory. It states that our decision to act is based on what we expect the outcome will be. A person may engage in crime because they expect it will lead to a desired reward, whether that's material gain, power, or respect. They've learned to expect a payoff. This brings us to one of the most famous experiments in psychology, Albert Bandura's Bobo doll study. Bandura demonstrated that children who watched an adult aggressively attack an inflatable doll would later imitate that exact behavior. This proved that aggression and violence can be learned simply through observation, a process called modeling. This theory combines two powerful ideas. It starts with Sutherland's theory of differential association, the idea that crime is learned through our social circles, summed up by the old saying, bad company promotes bad behavior. Ronald Akers then integrated the principles of reinforcement, arguing that we not only learn how to be criminal from our peers, but our behavior is also reinforced by their approval and the rewards we gain within that group. Another powerful motivator for crime can be frustration. According to Leonard Berkowitz, when our progress toward an important goal is blocked, it can generate intense anger and, in some cases, violence. This frustration is especially potent when we have a high expectation of success and suddenly find our path obstructed. Now let's pivot from learning theories to the raw power of the situation itself. Some of the most famous psychological studies have revealed that under the right circumstances, the situation we are in can cause us to act in ways that are completely contrary to our personalities and moral beliefs. Psychologist Craig Haney highlights a common bias called the fundamental attribution error. This is our tendency to explain someone's behavior by blaming their personality while underestimating the influence of the situation. We see someone act badly and think they are a bad person, rather than asking what in the situation could have caused that. Haney argues the situation is often far more powerful than we realize. This leads us to Stanley Milgram's chilling experiments on obedience to authority. Participants were instructed by a scientist in a lab coat to deliver what they thought were painful electric shocks to another person. Despite hearing screams of agony, a staggering 65% of participants obeyed orders and administered the highest level of shock. This study revealed a deeply unsettling truth about our willingness to obey authority, even when it means harming others. Milgram called this entering an agentic state, where we see ourselves as just an agent for someone else's will. Philip Zimbardo studied a related concept called de-individuation. This is a psychological state where being in a group or feeling anonymous causes us to lose our sense of individual identity and personal responsibility. When we feel like just a face in the crowd, we are more likely to engage in antisocial behavior. Zimbardo's most famous and controversial study was the Stanford prison experiment. He randomly assigned healthy, psychologically normal college students to be either prisoners or guards. In less than 2 days, the guards became sadistic and abusive, and the prisoners became passive and distressed. The situation became so toxic, the experiment had to be stopped early. It served as a horrifying illustration of how powerful situations and social roles can be in shaping our behavior. Another powerful situational phenomenon is the bystander effect. Popularized after the tragic murder of Kitty Genovese, research shows that individuals are less likely to offer help to a victim when other people are present. This is because of a diffusion of responsibility where everyone assumes someone else will intervene. Finally, how do people commit acts they know are wrong without being crippled by guilt? Albert Bandura proposed the theory of moral disengagement. This is a process where people use a set of psychological maneuvers to detach themselves from their own moral principles, allowing them to act inhumanely without feeling bad about it. These strategies are all around us. Moral justification frames a harmful act as being for a greater good. Displacement of responsibility is the classic "I was just following orders" Euphemistic language uses soft words to sanitize harsh reality, like calling civilian deaths collateral damage. And dehumanization involves seeing the victim as less than human, which makes it easier to justify cruelty against them. So, as we've seen, criminal behavior is not just about biology or individual pathology. It is profoundly influenced by what we learn, how we are reinforced, and the power of the situations we find ourselves in. Understanding these factors is absolutely critical to understanding the full picture of crime. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for our next video, and we'll see you then